Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we discuss my thoughts on Season 2, Episode 2 of the Orville, entitled Primal Urges. This was definitely an episode of escalating surprises, because I could have least suspected it was actually going to be a commentary on porn addiction, of all things. Even though, as I'm actively watching Bortus effectively shirking his duties on the bridge for like the fourth time in a row, I think the captain said, he's communicating to Clyde and he's got long hours, he's sneaking around and having these clandestine sexual encounters in the simulator. Taking into consideration the typical tone of this show with the comedy and everything, I'm actively trying to formulate and speculate, okay, where exactly is this going? And I began to sort of think, is this going to be like a comic interplay on like an alien, erectile dysfunction or something, where these clandestine, simulator meetings are actually analogous to the little blue pill, because of, for whatever reason, Bortus, he's constantly, sort of chasing after the next high, like a drug addiction. And he's just looking for that, satisfaction, that again, that sort of sexual gratification that he's just missing at home. And for whatever reason, it just didn't click with me until they actually explicitly said that's what it was all about. That was what it was all about for all intents and purposes. But the first shock and surprise of the episode is after this has happened a few times, and Clyden has finally had enough. We've seen Bortus and Clyden arguing, and Bortus is constantly dismissive and just like, we'll talk about it later, we'll talk about it later. They never talk about it. He never wants to talk about it. And so finally, after all these confrontations, we have, Bortus coming home, going to bed, and waking up to see Clyden looming over him with a dagger, and then Clyden driving that dagger into Bortus's chest. Now, at that point, I had begun to suspect that this was like a dream sequence or something, where maybe Bortus's guilt of sneaking around behind Clyden's back and seeking sexual gratification elsewhere maybe had caught up with him. And, once we came back from commercial, we were going to see that he's starting to question what he's doing or something like that. But no, we cut back to the show, and effectively there he is in sickbay. The doctor is just barely managing to revive him from the brink of death, and it was all legitimate. Clyden is in the brig and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like mind blown to learn that this is a cultural thing with them, that this is their divorce, which is like a smack upside the head. And I liked the sort of escalation of the characterization there, where we learn finally in the end that it's a hearkening back to the episode in season 1 where they had their child, and the whole gender politics that was drawn into question in that whole episode and everything like that. That this is really what was stymieing Bortus and his attraction to Clyden, and just the drama of that was really engrossing to me. And it was something I could least suspect, because, midway through the episode, they begin couples counseling, and it's kind of comedic and hilarious. Bortus is like, his first question is, do we get to pick our own weapons? Like they're going to have a duel to the death or something. That's what he thinks couples counseling is, which actually incidentally reminded me of the original Star Trek episode of Mock Time, where Spock has to fight Captain Kirk in lieu of fighting his betrothed, lover scenario. Something about that line of dialogue, can we choose our own weapons, reminded me of that. But as I say, this episode is just continually moving along, chugging along, and there's constant escalation in the dilemma, whether it's that characterization between Bortus and Clyden, or the sort of B plot, which is the star that is, threatening to destroy this planet, where when they first encounter, it's somewhat beautiful, and they don't really think anything of it, and then Isaac detects like an energy signature of potential fuel that they could mine, in just the barest amount of time that they have left, which leads to finding out, no, it's actually an artificial signal, it was produced by some kind of species. And lo and behold, there were these ruins, but they're not ruins. They're actually living beings still here. And then the dilemma of that, it continually escalated throughout the course of the episode, and all the way to the very end, where there's like 75 of them surviving in these caverns underground, and they can then only get 30 of them because everything has escalated, everything's moving, the momentum is moving and chugging along, and this planet has minutes to go, you know, that kind of thing. And then the whole computer virus thing, you know, as I'm watching the episode, again, formulating, speculating, where exactly is this going? I had begun to wonder if, you know, because I knew there was an inevitability that Bortus was going to be found out. I suspected that from the very beginning. But the manner through which he was found out, I thought was different than how it actually played out. When he goes to that sort of, you know, alien grotesque, if you will, in the engine room to try to get him to smuggle in this, you know, extreme sort of pornography simulation kind of scenario, which just turns out to be he wants a whole bunch of Mocklin males at once, you know, in a grove. I had begun to suspect that it was going to be, because we start to see the glitches, like, you know, instead of pizza, they get poop and whatever like that. I started to suspect that, in fact, it was that, you know, sort of a bootleg disc or whatever it was with that pornography on it. I had suspected the disc was, in fact, the cause of the glitches, but I had assumed that this was how it was going to play out, that Bortus was found out, that he was exposed. I had assumed that, you know, they were going to pinpoint it back to the simulator, and they would all walk in on Bortus, and this would be how it was exposed effectively. And then he would have to confront Clyden, but they just sort of inexplicably have Clyden go looking for him and stumble on it himself. You know, which it was a little bit less resounding, maybe a little bit anticlimactic, but it served its purpose in the end, I guess. Because Bortus eventually figures out how much Clyden actually means to him, how much having a family, you know, in this case a child with Clyden, how lucky he is to have someone at all, especially, you know, the parallel between the captain and Kelly and how that didn't work out, as, you know, Clyden points out, and how he, you know, Clyden is like dismissive. I don't want to hear it from you two because you haven't worked it out. Don't comment on my life and my, you know, relationship with my lover. You know, rightfully so. But this whole episode, you know, it wasn't the most action-packed thing, and I don't mean to give the impression, you know, if you look at my episode 1 of season 2 discussion video, I said the episode was largely sort of a yawn fest. It was kind of slow-moving and boring, and I was just waiting for something to happen. I don't mean to suggest that it always has to be tantamount action. No, not in the least. In this episode, I wouldn't call this action like where I think of action being, you know, laser fights and fighting with an alien and, you know, an alien baddie or something like that. But there was action, there was momentum in this story, and it was dramatic action in two ways, as I say, dealing with this planet and the people that they find on it, that they then have to save, and they can only save so many. And the whole dramatic tension, the dilemma, the drama playing out between Bortus and Clyden. I found it action-packed in a sense, you know, in that dramatic fashion. And I've actually, you know, I had a post on my episode 1 of season 2 discussion video that I read just in the past few hours. Somebody had written sort of a bullet point, you know, estimation of their appreciation for episode 1, in how it kind of dealt with the downtime between ports, if you will. If you think of old sailing vessels, there was a lot of time, days, months, you know, kind of scenario where they would be out on the ocean between ports. And in a sense, this is something that has, as the commentator had written, this is something that is often glossed over in Star Trek type series, where they're always warping to the next destination, and we just skip ahead, you know, as viewers, for the dramatic tension and everything like that. So the whole first episode of season 2 was effectively showing us what is happening, what's unfolding on the ship in the downtime, and that gave me a new appreciation for the first episode of season 2, which again I said, you know, my first impression was it was boring, it was slow moving, there was really nothing happening, but that would be life on you know, a spacefaring vessel for all intents and purposes. That would be daily life. And so I have a newfound appreciation for episode 1, but this episode kind of counterbalanced my point. Dramatic tension, dramatic momentum, you know, that kind of thing. Again, it was dramatically action-oriented because things were happening. It was constantly moving, and even though it was shocking and surprising in how it escalated and the things that were being revealed from, you know, point A to point B to point C, all throughout the course of it. I mean, it was just riveting. It was a much more engrossing episode than I thought the first episode was for, season 2 in its first viewing. And so, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode for all of its surprises. Again, mind blown that it was about porn addiction and this tumultuous relationship dynamic unfolding between Bortus and Clyden, and saving as many as they could of this alien culture and whatever like that. It was just good stuff. And so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 2 of season 2 of the Orville, Primal Urges. Love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below, as long as you're respectful to other people's opinions and that kind of thing. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to consider supporting my channel, I'd like to ask you to have a look at my PayPal contribution link posted both in the description as well as the comments below, which gives you options very much akin to Patreon, where you could set up a monthly contribution, one-time only kind of thing, or you could send me a personal message alongside a contribution, potentially requesting topics I may discuss in the future, ask for shout-outs, make recommendations of things I might check out, and that kind of thing. And anything you saw fit to send my way would be 2 thumbs up for me and just secure my longevity on YouTube as a direct line of support to me. And so yeah, otherwise, can't wait for the next one. That'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.